privileged to share with you a few words of Torah, of chizuk in the matter of care for each other, of avas chinam, in this unique and special program of Vayichan, bringing us all together to think about the togetherness of Klal Yisrael and to bring ourselves together. All are familiar with the classic story which the Gemara tells of that sinas chinam, that needless hatred that destroyed the Beis Hamikdash. It's the story of Kamtzo bar Kamtza, which is told in the Maseches Gittin, Daf Nun Hey, Amud Beis, Nun Vav, Amud Aleph, where we have this person who wasn't supposed to be invited to the wedding, who came to the wedding, and in order to be spared the embarrassment of having to leave, offered to pay first for his meal, then for half of the wedding, then for the entirety of the wedding, and nevertheless his requests were rejected. And the host, standing on the fact that he didn't like him and didn't want him to be there, and it bothered him too much to have this person there, insisted publicly that he leave. And it's sinas chinam, he gained nothing from it. In fact, he lost. Had he let him stay, he would have had the person pay for the wedding. No small matter. But nevertheless, the hatred was so great that even though it was for no benefit, the opposite, he insisted that he leave. That's the story of sinas chinam. We hear this story and we recoil from it, and we can't imagine such a level of hatred, of shaming. But there's another piece to the story, a very important piece to the story, and that is that it wasn't enough, this by itself, to get Bar Kamtza to start the process which would lead to the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. The Gemara says, Amar Hoil v'havu yasvi rabbanan v'lei mochu be'shma mina kanichaluhu. He says, at that wedding where I was just tossed out, where I was shamed, there was a table of dignitaries. There was a table of rabbanan, of the rabbis. And they didn't say anything. They let this happen without protest. Evidently, they're okay with it. That was what did him in. The fact that others, the fact that leaders didn't stand up to protest, to stop, to get in the way of this public shaming, that was what was so disappointing. Not disappointing, more than disappointing. That was what was infuriating to Bar Kamtza and led him to start the process that would bring to the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. And it's that piece which also has to be seen as part of the sinas chinam. We sometimes will only attribute to sinas chinam an act of hatred. But here, it was the passive lack of standing up to intervene in order to stop the hatred that is also part and parcel of it. Evidently, we have to get up to be able to make sure that people are taken care of. We often point out that there was a murder from Cain of Hevel, two brethren, the original act of terrible, terrible sinas achim. In a sense, sinas chinam, as Hashem said, because you can just make things better, Hevel. Cain, just bring your own nice korban and I'll accept it. But he killed him. He killed his brother. And when Hashem approached him about the killing of his brother, he tried to play dumb and to say that he didn't know. And he said, how should I know? Hashomeir, Achi, Anochi, am I responsible to guard my brother? And that terrible mistake, that assumption that he could say that and Hashem would say, okay, you're right, I don't know why I asked you. Why should you be responsible to watch your brother? That premise was fundamentally flawed. The responsibility of us to each other, to brothers, is to look out for each other, not just to not cause harm, not just not to be the one who kills, but to aggressively look out for each other. When Cain said with incredulousness, are you expecting me to be the guardian, to be the one to watch my brother? The real answer to that is yes. We say affirmatively, we are. We are. And if we don't, so then we end up with, heaven forbid, the aggressive act of sinas chinam. There's a small space between the Cain who says, I'm not responsible to watch out for my brother, and the Cain who actually kills him. This is a point we cannot be tired of making. And I want to come with you to look a little bit at a story, a story which we connect always to the sinas chinam, we view it, as the Meshech Chochma wrote, as the root of all sins, bein adam l'chaverei. The Meshech Chochma wrote that whereas the Chet HaEgel, which we commemorate on Yud Zayin B'Tammuz, on the 17th of Tammuz, is the origin and the root of all the sins, bein adam l'mokom, of all the sins between man and God, the original sin of Avodah Zarah. It is the Chet of Mechiras Yosef, the sin of the sale of Yosef, that is the root of the sins of bein adam l'chavero. And in that story we have something very important and very related to this idea of Hashomeir, Achi, Anochi. We all know about the resentment which built between Yosef and his brothers. And then the Torah says that his brothers went liros etzon aviyim b'Shechem, to shepherd the sheep of their father in Shechem. And Yisrael said to Yosef, behold, your brothers are shepherding there in Shechem. Let me send you aleim to see how they are. And Yosef was ready to go. Go see Shlom Achecha and Shlom Hatzon. Vayimtzo'eu ish. And a man encountered him, and Yosef was there wandering in the field, and he said, what are you seeking? Vayomer, and he said those famous words, Es hachai anochi mevakesh, I'm seeking my brothers. Hagidon ali efahim roim, tell me where they are. Vayomer ho'ish, and the man said, Nosu mizeh, they have traveled from this. Ki shamati omrim neilcha doisana, I've heard them saying we're going to go to Dosan. And Yosef went after his brothers, and he found them in Dosan. Rashi says, Nasu mizeh, they traveled from this. What do I mean from this? Not from this, but from here. That's what it should say. Says Rashi, Hisiu es atzmum min ha'achva. They've moved away from brotherhood. You're looking for your brothers. They don't consider you anymore like a brother. Listen to what happens next. So the man said to his brother, as they saw Yosef coming, Vayamru Shalochiv, Shimon said to Levi, Hine bal hachalomos halazeba, behold, that dreamer is coming. Let us kill him, and we will send him, throw him into one of the boros, and we'll say he was eaten up by a chayara, by a wild animal, and we'll see what will be with his dreams. They don't refer to Yosef as their brother. They refer to Yosef as a stranger, as a dreamer, because he siu atzma min achva, as we saw. They've moved away from brotherhood. Vayishma Ruvain hears, and he gets them to stop. He said, let's not kill him. Al tishbuchu dam, don't spill blood. Throw him to the bar, through the pit that's there in the desert. Don't send a hand against him. Laman hitzilo so miyodam, he wanted to save Yosef from their hands. So when Yosef came, they did it. They stripped him of his special garment. They threw him into the bar. They sat down to eat, as if nothing happened. It didn't bother them that their brother was in the bar. They just sat down to eat lunch. And then they see a group coming, and Yehuda says to his brothers, what do we gain by killing our brother and covering his blood? Let's sell him, let our hand not go against him, because he's our brother, our flesh. And his brothers heard. Now, the question is, what has been changed here? They already had been told by Reuven that they weren't going to kill him, and they already had decided that they weren't going to kill him. They just threw him into the pit. And the Ramban explains that what Reuven succeeded in getting them to do is to cease from inflicting harm themselves. They weren't going to kill him and throw his dead body into the bar. They would just throw him alive into the bar. They wouldn't kill him. They wouldn't inflict any wound. They wouldn't be the one to spill his blood. Instead, they throw him into a pit in the desert, where ultimately he would die of exposure, of starvation, of nechoshim ve'akravim, of snakes and scorpions. And with that, they were comfortable. We won't kill him. We just won't protect him. And they could only do that because they traveled from achva, from brotherhood. They moved away from the sense of brotherhood, from the sense of responsibility. Someone who's not a brother can say, I didn't do any harm. Responsibility, I don't bear responsibility. They could say, Hashomeir, am I expected to safeguard that person? Yehuda changed the discussion. Yehuda said, hey, we can't do this. Even though we can claim that we just threw him into the pit and then he died of his own, nah, it's the same thing. It's our brother. Kinaroges achinu, achinu b'sareinohu. Yehuda, as the Ramban says, said, you can't say any difference between grama, between causing it and inflicting it, between passive action, a passive position, allowing something to happen, is only an excuse if you don't take responsibility for the other person. If that person is your brother, if you treat that person as your brother, then it's not enough not to inflict harm. One has to go further, and one has to, in fact, step forward and protect. We are our brother's keeper, and that was what Yehuda brought it to that level. Yehuda, who would be the melech, and as the Ramban notes beautifully, the same thing would be true generations later, when Yehuda's descendant David HaMelech was taken to task for the killing of Uriah Hachiti, a person who he didn't kill, he just sent to the front. But also haragta becherev Bnei Ammon, you have killed him by the sword of the Bnei Ammon, because when you're a melech, when you're a king, you're the ultimate acceptor of responsibility for your brothers. You don't hide behind the fact, I didn't do it, I just put him in a situation where it happened. No, one has an active and aggressive responsibility to be there to stand up for someone. The rabbis at the story of Kamsa Bar Kamsa, they looked away. They saw something happening to him and they looked away. And so the victim, Bar Kamsa, felt their sinna, he felt their hatred. What do you mean he felt their hatred? They were just passive. They just didn't do anything. But he understood that brotherhood doesn't allow somebody to be passive. And if they could just sit there impassively while this was happening, that meant that there was no brotherhood. And if there was no brotherhood, the gap between not doing something to help and then ultimately doing something to harm is so narrow, is so small. What we're having here is a call with regard to Mechiras Yosef for achrayus, for responsibility for each other. It's not enough to be horrified at a story of hatred. One has to be horrified at a story of passivity, of a failure to take full and proper responsibility, to step up for, to try to do for each other. You know that the Geula we refer to as the Kates. The end. Yishlach l'Kates hayamin mishichenu. We look forward to the day, the end of days, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu will send our Mashiach to complete the picture of the world. But you know, Kates can mean different things. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem said at the time of the Mabul, Kates kol basar bolofanai. The end of all flesh is coming before me, because the world is filled with chamas, because the world is filled with theft and with corruption. Kates could be a bitter end, and Kates could be a happy ending. What's the difference? What defines it one way versus the other? What defines it one way versus the other? In the story of the Kates that happens there in the story of the Mabul, what we have is chamas, the failure interpersonally between people. That was what meant the end of the world. We know that the positive endings, like we had at the original Vayichan Sham Yisrael Neged Ahor at Matan Torah, was where people were united, ki ish echad b'lev echad, as opposed to there at the time of the Mabul, where the significant failure, as Chazal point out, was chamas, was theft, was people taking advantage of one another. But let's look at it one step further, as the difference between the two leaders of the time, Noach and Moshe. Noach was taken to task. The waters of the Mabul are called Mei Noach, the waters of Noach, not the waters that Noach survived, but the waters that to some degree Noach is blamed for. And Chazal tell us, and this is written in several places in the Zohar HaKadosh and beyond, that the failure of Noach was that HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, you know, the world is in a terrible place and it's not going to need to be destroyed. I want you to make for yourself a teva, for you, for your family, and you will be saved as the remnant of the Jewish people, not of the Jewish people, of humanity, and from you the world will be rebuilt. And Noach accepted that. Noach accepted that. Moshe Rabbeinu, the one who the Torah was given through, Moshe Rabbeinu said, I don't want to be like Noach. I want to go beyond Noach. And when Hashem spoke to Moshe Rabbeinu and said to him exactly the same thing, when we did the Yegel on the 17th of Tammuz, Hashem said to Moshe Rabbeinu, leave me and I will destroy them. Heref mimeni, allow me and I will destroy them. And I'll make you into a great nation. You'll be the remnant. You'll be the Noach. From you, the new world will be rebuilt. That's what Hashem proposed to Moshe Rabbeinu. And Moshe Rabbeinu said, no, if you don't save them, then don't save me. Moshe Rabbeinu was defined by an achrayus, by a responsibility. He hadn't killed his generation, he hadn't caused them to sin any more or any less than Noach had harmed his generation by causing them to sin. But he would not allow it to happen on his watch. He had to stand up. He had to say, my responsibility isn't just not to inflict harm, not to be filled with an active hatred, but I can't be passive. I have to care. I have to express positive responsibility for the rest of Klal Yisrael, for the rest of the Jewish people. That was Moshe Rabbeinu's claim. And that is what makes the difference between the Kates as the horrible ending, Kates kol basar of the Mabul, and the Kates which we hope for, Yishlach leKates hayamin mishichenu. And we can really see this. If we take ourselves back to Yosef and his brothers, we take ourselves back to that remedy which we need for the chet of Yosef and his brothers, for the ultimate geula, for the ultimate redemption. You know that the Gemara says that when Yaakov Avinu was approaching the end of his life, he gathered the brothers together and he said, I want to tell you, Asher Yikra Eschem Ba'achris Hayamim, what will come to you at the end of days. And he told them, he said, he tried to tell them what would happen at the end of the days, and Chazal say he wanted to reveal to them the Kates Hayomin. He wanted to reveal to them what the end of days would be like. But then, the Gemara says in Psachim, the presence of Hashem left him, and he had nothing to say, or he couldn't reveal the end of days. And he worried that maybe there was Psul Bizarro, maybe one of his children wasn't faithful. And they all stepped forward, and they said, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. We believe in God and the one God like you believe in the one God. The same way in your heart there's only the one God and only the belief in the one God, the same is true of us. Kach ein b'libeinu, ella echad. We also only have the one God in our heart. Great. Now Yaakov Avinu knew that all of his children were faithful to belief in God. But the Shekhinah didn't come back. He still couldn't reveal the Ketz. Why is that? What was still missing? They were all faithful. They were all believers. But what was missing was that maybe in their hearts was Hashem Echad, but Geula requires Ato Echad v'Shimcha Echad, you are one and your name is one, Umika Amcha Yisrael Goyechad B'Aretz. And who is like the Jewish people? A unified, a single nation in the land. The brothers may have been unified with God in their hearts, but they still weren't unified with each other. We would see this because right after Yaakov Avinu died and they finished burying him, they sent a message to Yosef, petrified that Yosef would harm them now that Yaakov was out of the way. Yikruvu Yemei Elovi, as Esav had said, hoping to take advantage and harm Yaakov when Yitzchak had died. They thought maybe Yosef would do the same thing. And at this point, he would be coming to pay revenge. He would be coming to get back at them. So that was what was missing. What was missing wasn't the Hashem Echad. What was missing was the Goy Echad, the ones who would be there for each other, the connection that would be there for each other. Yosef, of course, understood differently. He wasn't out to get them. He saw the whole story of him being sent down to Mitzrayim as a chance, as an opportunity which Hashem had granted him to take care of his brothers. His whole story of that travel to Mitzrayim wasn't the result to him of a brotherly hatred, but it was an opportunity for brotherly responsibility. L'hachios lochem, lifleita gedola. I was sent to Mitzrayim so that I would be positioned to provide you with sustenance, with the food that you need, to bring you salvation. Yosef was just thinking about brotherly responsibility. But his brothers weren't there. And because of that, the Kates, the end of days, wasn't quite yet there. Geula comes with the eradication of sinas chinam. But all of us here learning together, I don't think are plagued, Baruch Hashem, by hatred. We don't. The notion, the story of El Kamtzu Bar Kamtzu horrifies us. But what's called upon clearly is more than not throwing our brother into the pit, not chasing the person and embarrassing them from the wedding, but it is stepping up to be Shomer Achi, to safeguard our brother. It is stepping up to say we have to ensure their well-being, we have to care for them actively. We have to make sure that when someone is hurt or harmed or alone, that we're there for them, not like the ones who turn the other way, that people would say, Shema min anichalu, they're okay with this passive thing. No, we have to ultimately come together. And if we have a true faith in the Ato Echad V'Shimcha Echad, in God who runs the world, we cease to look at each other as threats, as people who get in the way, as people who somehow stop our offerings from making it to the top of the pile. Instead, when we truly believe in the Ato Echad V'Shimcha Echad, we're then free to love each other, to care for each other, to see no other as a threat. Emuna Lamasa, faith in God translated into practice, expresses itself in the love and care that we have for each other. Every day, multiple times a day, we daven Shemona Esrei. In that Shemona Esrei, we turn to Hashem. We recognize He's the master of the world. We recognize that our fate is in His hand. We ask Him for everything we need, and we express gratitude for everything that we have. And then we end the Shemona Esrei, and we say, Sim Shalom, bring peace between brethren. And perhaps the idea behind that is, because if indeed we have incorporated into ourselves the lessons of Tefillah, and we recognize that Hashem runs the world, we could stop being ill at ease with each other. We can stop feeling the competition from each other, and instead we could just be there for each other. Before we finish the Shemona Esrei, before we step out in the world, we ask Hashem to let our faith translate into real action. May that bring the Ketz Hayamin. May our belief of Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, allow us not only to stand before God in faith, but to stand together in faith, to be able to stand together caring for each other, to have the opposite of the Mabul, to follow the path of Moshe Rabbeinu, that for us to win, for us to be saved, for us to grow, our particular piece of Klal Yisrael to grow and to flourish, it's not enough. We need every piece to grow and to flourish. And we have to do our part to make sure that we grow and we flourish together, that every one of us does. May each and every one of us step up to be the Shomer Achi, to be the one who's actively involved in taking care of each other. May this day of learning lead to a greater sense of commitment between us together that will bring the Geula Shalema B'mehera B'yameinu.